You think you've seen brutal. You think you've witnessed carnage. You think you know what crossing the line looks like in professional wrestling. Well, let me tell you something that's going to make your blood boil with absolute rage. Bronson Reed just committed what might be the most vicious, most cowardly, most despicable act we've seen in years. After Smackdown went off the air, when the cameras supposedly stopped rolling, when Paul Heyman was defenseless and vulnerable, Bronson Reed didn't just attack him. He didn't just assault him. He destroyed him. He brutalized a 58-year-old non-wrestler in a way that has the entire WWE universe calling for his head. And if you're not furious about what happened, if you're not demanding answers, if you're not ready to see justice served, then you need to check your pulse, because what we witnessed was beyond wrestling. It was personal, it was cruel, and it was unforgivable. Before we break down this absolute atrocity, you need to smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell right now, because WrestleSphere is the only place giving you unfiltered, no-holds-barred analysis of the moments that matter. We don't sugarcoat. We don't make excuses. We tell it like it is, and what Bronson Reed did demands the truth. Now let's dive into this nightmare. Picture this: SmackDown has just ended. The crowd is filing out. Superstars are heading to the back. Paul Heyman, the legendary manager, the wise man, the special counsel to Roman Reigns, is making his way through the backstage area. He's not in his wrestling gear, because he's not a wrestler. He's in his suit, probably thinking about the next segment, the next promo, the next strategic move for his tribal chief. And then, out of nowhere, Bronson Reed appears like a monster from a horror movie. No warning, no provocation, no reason that makes any sense. And what does this 330-pound wrecking ball do? He doesn't challenge Heyman to bring out Roman. He doesn't cut a promo. He doesn't give any explanation. He just attacks. But here's what makes this so much worse than a typical wrestling beatdown: this wasn't a worked shoot. This wasn't part of the show. This was after SmackDown. This was when Paul Heyman had every right to believe he was safe. This was when a 58-year-old man who hasn't wrestled in decades was completely and utterly defenseless. Let me describe what happened in graphic detail, because you need to understand the severity of this assault. Bronson Reed didn't just throw a few punches. He didn't just send a message. He went into full destroyer mode on someone who couldn't possibly fight back. Reed grabbed Heyman and launched him into equipment cases. The sound of Paul's body hitting those metal containers echoed through the backstage area like a car crash. Then, as Heyman tried to crawl away like a wounded animal, Reed stalked him like a predator toying with prey. The Tsunami Splash. Reed's devastating finishing move that has put actual wrestlers on the shelf for months. He hit it on Paul Heyman. Not once, not twice, multiple times. Each one driving the air out of Heyman's lungs. Each one potentially causing internal injuries. Each one showing absolutely zero mercy or restraint. Backstage personnel tried to intervene. They begged Reed to stop. Security rushed in, but by the time they got there, the damage was done. Paul Heyman lay motionless, possibly seriously injured, while Bronson Reed stood over him with this sick, satisfied look on his face, like he'd just accomplished something to be proud of. You want to know what really makes me sick about this? Bronson Reed is supposed to be this big, tough, intimidating monster. He's supposed to be someone who destroys wrestlers. He's supposed to prove his dominance against people who can fight back. But what does he do instead? He attacks a manager. A 58-year-old man. Someone who's never claimed to be a fighter. Someone whose entire role is to talk, to strategize, to manage matters. This isn't just any manager. This is arguably the greatest manager and advocate in wrestling history. This is the man who managed Brock Lesnar through his most dominant runs. This is the wise man who's been instrumental in Roman Reigns' historic championship reign. This is a legend of this business. Paul Heyman has given decades to professional wrestling. He's created ECW, one of the most influential promotions ever. He's crafted some of the most memorable promos in WWE history. He's elevated every single person he's ever worked with. His mind for the business is unmatched. His loyalty to his clients is unwavering. And this is how he gets repaid. By being used as a human punching bag by someone trying to make a name for himself. By being destroyed just to send a message to someone else. Paul Heyman deserves better. He deserves respect. And what Bronson Reed did was the complete opposite of respect. Social media exploded after footage of this attack leaked. And I'm not talking about normal wrestling fan reactions. I'm talking about genuine outrage. People aren't discussing whether this is good storytelling or bad booking. They're calling for Reed's suspension. They're demanding WWE take action. They're expressing real concern for Paul Heyman's health and safety. Twitter became a war zone with fans divided into camps. One side is furious, saying this crossed every line imaginable. They're arguing that attacking non-wrestlers, especially someone Paul's age, is never acceptable even in storyline. They're pointing out that this normalizes violence against people who can't defend themselves and sends a terrible message. Another side is trying to defend it as just wrestling, and claiming people are being too sensitive. They're saying this is what creates heat and makes Reed a legitimate monster heel. They're arguing that if you don't like it, you don't understand the business. And then there's a third group that's genuinely worried. They're not thinking about storylines or heat. They're concerned about Paul Heyman the person. They're asking if he's okay. They're questioning if Wee's insurance covers this. They're wondering if legal action will be taken. Now here's where this gets really interesting from a storyline perspective, and potentially explosive from a real-world perspective. Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman have one of the most important relationships in all of WWE. Paul isn't just Roman's manager. He's his confidant, his strategist, his wise man. They've built an empire together. So what happens when someone attacks your wise man? What happens when someone puts their hands on the person closest to you in this business? Roman Reigns can't just let this slide. He can't. His entire character is built on family, loyalty, and respect. If he doesn't respond to this with overwhelming force, his credibility is shot. But here's the question that should be burning in everyone's mind: is Roman's response going to be enough? We've seen Roman destroy countless challengers. We've watched him overcome every obstacle. But this is different. This is personal. This isn't about titles or territory. This is about someone crossing a line that should never be crossed. Theory 2. This is about opportunity. Reed sees that Roman might be vulnerable with all the bloodline drama. He sees a path to the top, but it goes through the tribal chief. So he attacks the person closest to Roman to draw him out and create the biggest match possible. Theory 3. Reed is just a sadistic monster who enjoys inflicting pain. Maybe there's no grand strategy. Maybe he's just embraced being the most hated person in WWE and decided to do something that would make him universally despised. Regardless of the motivation, the execution was inexcusable. There's building heat, and then there's going too far. This was too far. Here's what's absolutely critical right now: how does WWE respond to this? Did they suspend Bronson Reed? Did they fine him? Did they use this as a storyline to build to a massive confrontation with Roman? Or did they condemn it and try to distance themselves from the violence? WWE has a responsibility here. They can't just let this happen without consequences. Even in the world of professional wrestling where violence is part of the show, there have to be lines. Attacking non-wrestlers crosses that line. Brutalizing someone who can't defend themselves crosses that line. If WWE handles this correctly, they can create one of the most heated feuds in recent memory. Roman Reigns hunting down Bronson Reed for revenge while Paul Heyman recovers could be compelling television. But it has to be handled with care and with respect for the real people involved. Let's be absolutely clear about something: Paul Heyman is 58 years old. He's not an active wrestler. His body isn't conditioned to take the kind of punishment that full-time performers absorb. Those tsunami splashes from a 330-pound man could cause serious injuries. We're talking broken ribs, internal bleeding, organ damage, real medical emergencies. As of right now, we don't have official word on Paul's condition. WWE has been suspiciously quiet. That silence is deafening. Are they trying to work us? Are they keeping things under wraps while Paul recovers? Or is the situation more serious than anyone wants to admit? The wrestling community needs to rally around Paul Heyman right now. Regardless of how you feel about storylines or booking decisions, this is a person who may be seriously hurt. Our thoughts should be with him and his family during this time. This attack has opened Pandora's box. The fallout is going to be massive. Bronson Reed can't just walk away from this without consequences, both in storyline and potentially in real life. Roman Reigns has to respond, and that response needs to be nuclear. I predict we're heading toward one of the most personal, most violent feuds WWE has seen in years. This isn't going to be settled with a handshake or a clean match. This is blood feud territory. This is, I want to end your career, level hatred. And honestly, Bronson Reed better be prepared for what's coming. Because you don't attack Paul Heyman without unleashing the full fury of the tribal chief. You don't cross that line without paying a price that will haunt you for the rest of your career. Bronson Reed destroyed Paul Heyman after Smackdown in an attack that was brutal, cowardly, and absolutely inexcusable. He crossed every line. He attacked a non-wrestler. He showed zero mercy to someone who couldn't defend themselves. And now he's created a situation that can only end one way, with Roman Reigns making him pay. Love it or hate it, you can't ignore it. This is the moment that will define Bronson Reed's career, for better or worse. This is the attack that will be talked about for years. So tell me in the comments, are you furious about what Reed did? Do you think he went too far? What should Roman's response be? And most importantly, are you worried about Paul Heyman's health? This is WrestleSphere, where we break down the moments that matter, and this is a moment that will never be forgotten.